Starting, we are now live.
All right. Good evening, Facebook friends and family, and welcome to the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center's second annual Juneteenth Memoriam and celebration. And we are so glad to be coming to you live from the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. We haven't been here in a while, so it's good to be back in the home of T. Thomas Fortune. This is a National Historic Landmark for this great man who we're going to hear some words about him tonight. For those of you who don't know who T. Thomas Fortune is, you will learn about him tonight along with some other powerful messages that will be brought forward tonight by our speakers, Dr. Walter Grayson, our own world professor, and our president emeritus for the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation. We're also going to hear from Dr. Gretna Wilkinson, the poet laureate for T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center, and cultural critic and board member of the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation, Birgit Mondesir. I'm Gilda Rogers, and I'm glad to be here with all of you this evening. I'd like to start off by reading the order that came down to those enslaved people in Texas, which gives us this holiday now that we celebrate called Juneteenth. And it comes from the headquarters of the District of Texas, Galveston, Texas, on June 19th, 1865, the General Orders Number 3. The people are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at any military post, and they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. And this is the order from Major General Granger. So on that note, I just want to say a few words and thank you again for being here with us. I'd like to bring our attention to this moment that we're experiencing right now, Black Lives Matter, standing up against police brutality and racism throughout this country, all right? Institutionalized racism that has existed here from 401 years now, all right? And now this is a moment, this is our moment, all of us who are coming together collectively to stand up and fight for the rights of African American people and all marginalized people. And that is really what this celebration makes it very special tonight, Juneteenth, because we are in a historic moment right now. And on that note, I'm going to invite our world professor, Dr. Walter Grayson, to come up, and he's going to deliver some words about T. Thomas Fortune, which should awaken all of us about the person T. Thomas Fortune was, his courage, and how he actually moved this country in a direction that we're in right now. All right, so he is a trailblazer. So, Dr. Grayson, I'd like to welcome you now. It's all yours.
For just a couple minutes. Good evening. It is a pleasure to join you all this evening, and I hope you'll enjoy Juneteenth. We have a spectacular day here in New Jersey, but hopefully where you are, you have a chance to breathe the fresh air, drink a cup of your favorite beverage, and think about how lucky we are to be free. As I came to do this talk. I had done a short presentation for a Philadelphia landmark last evening, the library company founded by Benjamin Franklin. And in that context, I really summoned the voice of Frederick Douglass, who talked about what to the Negro is the 4th of July. And he essentially pointed out the hypocrisy and the sham of an Independence Day when you had millions of Americans held in bondage in 1852. And so I flipped that last night and I asked, what to the white American is Juneteenth? What to the white American is Juneteenth? And for the first time in the nation's history, we can say it's a special day. It is a day that is now being reckoned with for the realization of freedom. That unlike the lies and the deception that Frederick Douglass highlighted, we can now look at the potential of having a freer nation because the country no longer accepts the kinds of police brutality and the abuse of black lives that we saw with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. You know, I almost said the boxer's name. George Floyd, and so many other hundreds of people who have lost their lives, and not just African Americans. Everyone from every background has faced this kind of violence, but particularly African Americans. And so this evening, I wanted to take a moment to celebrate what Juneteenth is all about. And for us to look at Black Lives Matter not as just the need to reform and transform systemic change through every American institution. We need to change our police forces. We need to change our schools and our local governments and our banking systems, our hospitals, our Medicare and healthcare systems. All of it needs to be reformed. But tonight, as we talk about Juneteenth in the context of T. Thomas Fortune, I am so happy to share with you all the story of how we expand freedom. Because that's what Thomas Fortune's life was about, was fighting uphill against monstrous injustice, lynchings and riots, and still believing in the power of thought and of the written word to reach into someone's heart, of poetry to touch someone's soul, of music to motivate us to find new beauty in each other's lives. This is what T. Thomas Fortune was about, and it's particularly important to place him in dialogue with Frederick Douglass. That as Douglass's words inspired the country to then take over and say that slavery must be abolished, T. Thomas Fortune's words between 1880 and 1925 gave us the blueprint of building a free and just society that we can follow today. And so as we look at Fortune's essays, we see him outline political action committees at the local level that said, we're not just Democrats or Republicans. This isn't just a partisan society. We believe in principles and justice and equality for all people. It doesn't matter what party you come from. You can pursue that common principle. That's what Fortune laid out for people who had supported the Republican Party for 2 decades coming out of Reconstruction and said, well, stop. Now that we're in this new place in New York or Philadelphia or Red Bank, maybe we should hear what the Democrats have to say too. And that process of negotiation is how we all should be. We should all be politically independent and choosing candidates who are going to speak most forcefully for us. That was Fortune's advice. But for me, in the research I've done on Fortune, the most persuasive argument is about the economics he outlined. The economic agenda of liberty for every person. That no matter what, as an American, you should own property. And the key that no one really appreciates today is that we typically think about this as a car or a house that someone should own, and that gives you more mobility, or a place that's safe for you to come and stay and sleep at night. This was not the property that Fortune was talking about that is the promise of the United States, the promise of freedom around the world. Property is business. Properties are companies that generate new value and new revenue that enable you to buy more houses or more cars or more coats or more food for your dinner table. Can you imagine an agenda today where every middle school student is taught how to run their own business? Where every high school student has created 2 or 3 new businesses before they graduate with their degree? That every college student isn't desperately out there looking for a job so they can pay off a loan, but they actually are looking to hire their friends to come in and build the next version of Amazon or Facebook or Google so that they are going to end up creating new opportunities for the next 100 years. That's Fortune's vision. He wanted to see African Americans become business and property owners so that they would not have to depend on anyone to give them a job, to find a way to make ends meet. That's what we're doing here at the Fortune House. We're pointing you towards both political and economic freedom, and most importantly, cultural freedom, where you can write your own poetry, you can write your own music, you can find new forms of art in painting and photography and sculpture to celebrate your inner self and share your greatest gifts with all the people around you. This is T. Thomas Fortune. This is what the Fortune Cultural Center is here for. We invite you to join us, and as I closed my speech yesterday, we believe in shouting and crying for freedom every day. Cry freedom in your home. Cry freedom at your job. Cry freedom in all of your neighborhoods and communities. This is what the Fortune's mission is, as he embodies the traditions of Juneteenth. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you, Dr. Grayson. That was wonderful. T. Thomas Fortune indeed was a leader, and it's a shame that many people do not even know who T. Thomas Fortune is, but now we're here at the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center, and it is our mission to make sure everyone knows his leadership and what he brought to this country, which makes him this important figure in not just Black history, but American history. We are keeping our foot on the gas. That is our motto here at the Fortune Cultural Center when it comes to this moment that we're living through right now. We all, I know for myself, the image of George Floyd being murdered, I don't know how long it will take for that image to leave my mind. And it was most unfortunate, but here we are now, able now to come together collectively because of his sacrifice, of his life that they took away from him, police that are supposed to protect and serve. And in honor of George Floyd, I couldn't be more proud than to know Dr. Gretna Wilkinson, one of the most profound poets I've ever witnessed. And she actually crafted a poem called 1973-2020, George Floyd. At this moment, I'd like to bring to the podium Dr. Gretna Wilkinson.
Yay!
Hello, friends in Facebook land, friends and family. June 19, 2020. A poem like mine should be pointless. This should have been a waste of your time to have to listen to it, but it's not. And this poem includes Tamir Rice and all of the George Floyds, male and female. In the event I am pregnant, I pray it's not a boy. Dear God Almighty, the child is always dying in my never-ending nightmares. Once, he left my uterus around 12 years old, fully clothed, taking his pacifier and what I believe is the placenta with him. This newborn ignored my cries of pain and began unscrewing his own head. Mission accomplished, he unsnapped his neck popped his head back on like it was a cap, cradled the neck with his free arm, and left the delivery room. By now, my tongue is parched, and every word I have ever known is dry rotted. She's in shock, the midwife mumbled. With no means to ask where he was going, I could feel helplessness scorching my palate. I forgot to worry if I would ever see him again, for I did not name him, obeying Dead Black Children Anonymous motto. If mothers don't name our babies, we stand a better chance of not losing our minds, becoming arsonists, or mass murderers, or dying before our time. Finally, Mama! The wail broke free from my throat and shocked the first shock out of me. I wanted my dead mother resurrected. Maybe Mama Power could find my baby, still holding his neck, and turn his body back home to my bosom. You'll know him, Mama. He's the handsome one, protecting his neck. Hurry! There's not much time now. There's not much Mama!
Gretna, thank you for that. When I read that poem, I got in touch with Gretna right away and said to her, Gretna, first of all, I have no words. I don't even know what to say in response to that poem. But I will, what I want to say to you, would you be our poet laureate here at T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center and be able to invite in our fortune tellers and other young students to study under Gretna, to learn and resonate and use their voice in such a powerful way that it moves people as obviously Gretna is able to do. So again, thank you, Gretna, for that beautiful piece. Beautiful, right? Up next, I'd like to introduce Birgit Mondesir, who is a board member of the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. And more than that, she's our conscience. She's Red Bank's conscience. She's a cultural critic. She's a straight shooter, straight, no chaser. So I'm going to tell all of you right now out there in Facebook land, put your seatbelts on, because we about to go for a bumpy ride, okay? So here comes Miss Birgit Mondesir with Let's Call a Thing a Thing. Okay, come on, Miss Thing.
Thank you, Gilda, and thank you, Gretna, for bringing me full circle and putting me in touch with the center of my womanhood and all that is a mother in me. To that end, let me get to what I came here to do. This is an open commentary to our racial situation. Let's call a thing a thing. I'm not here to intellectualize the conditions under which this country was founded, formed, and still exists. As my sister Yala Van Zandt so appropriately said, I'm here to call a thing a thing. Juneteenth, June 19, 1865, the day white people could no longer keep our emancipation a secret, should be memorialized as Emancipation Day for all Americans, and given at least the same importance as July 4th. However, most white people and some black people have never ever heard of Juneteenth until now. That's because the history of America has been usurped and arrested, much like the lives of its black people. Shame is a silencer of truth and the distortion of history. Shame diminishes both the victim and the victimizer, so you won't readily find it in our textbooks. Now consider that 155 years after the final emancipation of the last slaves, we're faced with someone who in the midst of a pandemic was literally rallying his base of white supremacists and the ignorant of all races in Tulsa, Oklahoma on June 19, 2020, until recently changed. It begs the question, why Tulsa? And why on this day? Let me help you understand. In 1921, Greenwood District of Tulsa, Oklahoma was the site of the worst domestic terrorist act directed against black people after America's failed Reconstruction following the Civil War. Greenwood was a place where black people had actually managed to build a thriving town of black businesses, black professionals, in a sufficient, self-sufficient society of prosperity and growing wealth. Booker T. Washington even called it the Black Wall Street. So what did white supremacists do? They burned the entire town to the ground. A massacre of over 300 descendants of slaves, destroying black lives, families, and property. It left thousands homeless and survivors to tell the story of black bodies put on trains and dumped off bridges across the Arkansas River, or tossed in mass grave. Now juxtapose these events with the proposed rally on the date of the emancipation of enslaved black people, and it lays bare the oxymoron of black people in America. There's no mistaking the slap in the collective faces of African Americans. It's particularly painful given the present revolution of what it means to be black in America. Let's call a thing a thing. Still, the misguided and delusional say, all lives matter, in a dismissive attempt to ignore the truth. Do you know that genocide and apartheid had a welcome seat at the American table? We just called it Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, Florida, and the Great Migration. That's when millions of blacks fled the South from 1915 to 1970, running from the domestic terrorism of the Ku Klux Klan. And yes, they too are still here, now better known as nationalists. What better way to legitimize evil than to equate it with patriotism? Just calling a thing a thing. If all lives matter, black people would not have been enslaved, sold, beaten, lynched, constitutionally considered 3/5 human, marginalized, and segregated. we've been denied access to proper education, housing, jobs, ownership, and health care, resulting in the disproportionate deaths that this pandemic so clearly demonstrates. Conservatively speaking, at least 16 generations of wealth and prosperity have irreversibly been stolen from us. If Black lives matter, if all lives matter, Black people would not continue to be incarcerated for profit as a solution to all that ails us. If all lives matter, we would not be sacrificed as drug epidemics saturate our neighborhoods. Yet, when the same drug epidemic hits white communities, efforts are immediately instituted to rehabilitate a social illness instead of the jail time routinely received by Blacks. Let's just call a thing a thing. Black children are devalued and treated more harshly for the same offenses as white children, resulting in expulsion and suspension rates filling the school to prison pipeline. Did you know that where you live more often determines your outcome? Not your ability, not the content of your character. That's because the education of the children of America is directly tied to wealth. Poor neighborhood, poor school. Rich neighborhood, rich school. How can America educate its children in such an inequitable way? Yet we do, because more often than not, poor children are disproportionately Black and brown. Read about Bordentown, an elite school for Black children, which was actually later converted into a juvenile facility for Black children. Do all lives really matter? When Colin Kaepernick, I'll say his name, even if Roger Goodell and his hypocrisy did not. Colin Kaepernick, when he took a knee during the national anthem to protest Black lives being lost to police brutality, someone called him a son of a bitch and vilified him and others as un-American. This resulted in him being professionally ostracized and jobless. What unadulterated arrogance and audacity to imply that Black people don't care about America. To that person, I say, how dare you? How dare you accuse Black people of being the very thing you are? You, who have never fought for anything other than yourself. Black people, Black folks, fought for America when we weren't even considered Americans. We fought in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I and II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and every war since then. We fought for America when we were segregated in order to do so. Have you heard of the Tuskegee Airmen? We fought for America when we weren't even allowed to vote. This should be the headlines in our history books, but it's not, because that history was written by those who controlled it, corrupted by those who refused to acknowledge America's sins against humanity. Instead, some Americans readily accept the ridiculous jabberings of a fool instead of facing the truth. Black people are more American than the most American of us. We fight every day to be American. That's why Black lives matter. We fight the Amy Coopers, the Central Park poster child for the weaponization of white privilege. Those who secretly feel that America only belongs to white people and use their privilege to determine the outcome for people of color. We hear her voice when we're told, sorry, we just chose someone else for that job. Or, oh, you just missed the criteria for that business loan. Or, we just rented that apartment. It's voices like hers that tell LeBron James to shut up and dribble, demeaning his intellect and reminding him of his place in this white world. Her kind often reverts to the go back to where you come from attack, just on the presumption that your skin is not white. You see, like any good DNA, the DNA of racism remains with us and manifests itself in very many ways. We have to shout, Black Lives Matter, because America tries to tell us every day that we don't. Just calling a thing a thing. Now let's talk about racism and religion. America prides itself on being a God-fearing nation. One nation under God. In God we trust. Do you know that most atrocities have been committed in the name of religion? Almost every form of racial separatist will point to a holy book to validate their abomination. So to the evangelicals who have hijacked the word of God in support of an idiot who uses the Bible as a prop for his shameless, narcissistic, self-serving single-mindedness, know this. Galatians 6:7 says, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, he will also reap. And here's another one just for free. Proverbs 1 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Out in the open, wisdom calls aloud. She raises her voice in the public square. On top of the wall, she cries out. At the gate, she makes her speech. How long will you simple, love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? Preach that to your followers and stop misleading God's people to their own demise. And to some politicians who have led their constituents to follow the Pied Piper like rats into the sea, there is a reckoning for you too. And it goes far beyond a vote or a vote suppressed. You're more concerned with keeping Americans armed with guns than with knowledge. Some have completely abandoned their duties, praising the emperor in his new clothes, even as he stands ignorantly naked, even to the eyes of a child. This nation and our position in the world will be the ultimate sacrifice. We've heard time and again from those who actually have knowledge and wisdom. Yet we close our eyes, we close our ears, and we close our mouths to the ways of truth, justice, and equality. Just calling a thing a thing. In this newfound consciousness of Black lives lies our collective redemption. It's time to unearth the truth, correct and relearn our history, shed the hypocrisy and the shame, make restoration, restitution, and reparations for every institutional atrocity. It's time to tear down those Confederate monuments of American genocide. As Professor Brittany Cooper of Rutgers University said, they're not heritage. They are a heritage of hatred. Can we ever truly say the United States of America? Will we lift every voice and sing? Can we crown thy good with brotherhood? Will we commit ourselves to liberty and justice for all? Can this be a thing that's not just a thing?
Amen.
Woo-woo, we heard that. Yes, right? I think she covered everything, right? She got it all right? So, Birgit, thank you for being our conscience. I really mean that. I love you. I love you for that.
I love you back.
All right? I'm going to ask Dr. Wilkinson to come up again and do another poem. And come on up.
Richard Brooks's running from the police made me think of times when our ancestors ran, and they ran with a purpose. And this one is called, Freedom Song. Freedom Day. Just a couple of dollars in this here worn out pocket. But I sure as hell give it to the man who can tell me he know the troubles I seen. Freedom still ringing in me ears, and me, I can't read a lick of this paper the man shoving me hand when him tell me I's free. If I could read, I'd sure enough figure out if this is a fixing for a setup. Cause, man, I's always a running. Even when they tie me up, I's a running. Why, just the last time I run, they beat all them old wounds on me back into submission, then sell me down river to this here place. Even God didn't waste time to forsake. He just plain walk away, and he left it alone, and he left them thinking that beating me back when stop me feet. A long, long time ago now, ever since sale number 2, I decided that them dried up, healed over sores on me back can open up anytime them beasts feel like making more marks on the property. If that ever stopped me, then hell must be met with ice. Because I truly believe now that a man must die running if the man can't die free.
Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to ask Dr. Grayson to come back up. He has a real important announcement to make. Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody. What a beautiful evening. I hope you all have enjoyed this extraordinary evening. And a round of applause, please. For
Yay!
So, one amazing piece. Juneteenth is always a spectacular day. This year, in this area that I've spent so much of my life studying, this is a special one for Juneteenth 2020. Back in 2014, Rich Veit and Chris DeRosa and Hetty Williams and I got together and started a series of presentations at Monmouth University about Woodrow Wilson and his legacy in the United States. And so we tried to be comprehensive. We covered his work when he was New Jersey governor and president of Princeton University. We covered his work as a president and a diplomat through the First World War. We also covered his record of segregationism and how he reversed much of the promise of equal rights for all people during his time in the White House. And lastly, we covered the rising trend of police protests coming out of the killing of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, and talked about this new fledgling organization called Black Lives Matter. This conversation stretched and challenged the people at Monmouth University to remove Wilson's name from our main administrative building. And after 2 years of conversation and much debate, the board took action to keep the name of Wilson on the building and saying, yes, we're more aware and we've educated ourselves about this, but we have fond memories of this building's name, and so we will keep it. Well, times have changed. Yesterday, due to the resurgent international global movement for Black Lives, the Board of Trustees at Monmouth University, led by our new president, Patrick Leahy, voted to remove Woodrow Wilson's name from
Yay!
And in addition, they did not stop there. Our student activists pressured and pushed and continue to push for a different day in this region. They got the board to concede as well a $3 million endowment to fund social justice programming at the university and in our surrounding communities. So this is a profound victory, and I hope you all will join in it and celebrate wherever you are to realize that nothing is impossible. As we pursue this vision, we can have our day of Jubilee. Our Juneteenth can redefine this entire world.
Yes.
Amen.
Born Black in America is a journey like no other. Born Black in America starts the whittling away of the spirit, the heart of the people. Born Black in America is the reconciliation of a concept foreign to anything that makes sense. But once born Black in America, it is your duty to figure this out. Otherwise, you will fail. Born Black in America is a grim reality. But even grimmer are those who die, never knowing how valiant and liberating it is to be Black in America. So I thank you for tuning in to us this evening for our Juneteenth celebration here today at the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. Please visit our website, www.tthomasfortuneculturalcenter.org. Be looking for new exhibits that will be coming to the Cultural Center once we are clear to open. And we look forward to inviting all of you back into our home and resuming all of the good work that we want to bring to all of you, to bring all of us together forever and ever and ever. All right? Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
Yay!